Another eventful NBA season has passed, with this one carrying more circumstances than most. The LA Lakers are claimed the title. LeBron gets his fourth ring, beating the Miami Heat, and his fourth Finals MVP, moving him into consideration of the greatest of all time. And before you know it, not even when the champagne has been fully dried off the trophy, here comes the instigators. All types of NBA fans, far and wide, all of a sudden has an opinion. From so-called experienced TV analysts, past NBA greats, and forgotten role players searching for a crumb of relevancy.
But right now, I want to sit back and give you guys my personal take about the current landscape of the GOAT conversation, in my humble opinion. Honestly, this is one of the most sensitive subjects to talk about in regards to any sport you play, because we're talking about the greatest of all times in all different eras. In Wilt and Kareem's time, you could tell that it was a league that was still in its incubation period, but you could tell that there was a lot of room to grow. In Jordan's time, he was one of the first guards to rack up multiple MVPs in a big man-led league, and no matter how you slice it, that is pretty impressive. In Jordan and Kobe's time, it was a point that you could tell the talent gap was so evident from now and back then that most games that you've seen on TV were played at a high level, exciting pace, and a great enjoyment for everybody, no matter if it's a sorry team or an elite team. And also, this is one of the eras where it was a dawn of the super team, which, in all honesty, super teams has been around since the 60s and the 70s, even more so in the 80s. You had the Showtime Lakers, you had the Bad Boy Pistons, the great legendary Celtics team of old, and even Utah and Portland was competitive back then. The point is, there were always multiple All-Stars on one team since the beginning of the NBA. Like, it's common knowledge that most teams that you've seen in all the highlight tapes and all the championship videos, they all had multiple All-Stars. The guys that they went through all had multiple All-Stars as well on that team, but that's neither here or there. Nick Wright the other day on First Things First was giving out his take about LeBron, and everybody knows that he's the biggest LeBron stan walking and breathing. When he gave his argument about Jordan versus LeBron, he had this to say.
Been having this debate for 3 years on television, and I've never wanted to do what I'm about to do. The media does not want you to know about Michael Jordan. Before Scottie Pippen got there, a total and complete loser. Larry Bird, the best player when he walked into the league. You know how many times Michael beat Larry in the playoffs? I don't mean in a series, I mean in a single playoff game. The answer to that is 0. Can we show guys who won rings in years Michael Jordan played? Well, Larry won, Kareem won, Magic won, Isaiah.
And stop the clip right there. Most of the guys, now here's the bad thing about this list. As you can see, most of the guys on this list already won rings before Jordan came into the league, so he basically came in during their prime, so of course they were going to dominate. Other guys on this list, such as Shaq, Kobe, Tim Duncan, David Robinson, even Clyde Drexler, the man that Jordan beat to win his first ring, are ones on this list that won rings while Jordan was retired. He was running an NBA team while this was going on. So how is this considered under his watch, technically? Because of Wizards Jordan? By then, his team wasn't even in competition for a ring. So how does that even count? And honestly, if you really want to be blunt, half of Jordan's teams back then in his early days were on coke. So what the hell do you expect him to do? But what makes arguments like this so bad, and among other ones that I've heard, is that people try so hard to uplift somebody's career that they need to shoot down another person's career and minimize his achievements to make it seem like the player that they're vouching for is so legendary. But now, you want to make it seem like Jordan was going through all this trouble because he wasn't good of a player himself, when in reality, his teams wasn't up to par. When he finally got Pippen, he was still losing to the Pistons, because you know why? They were a team still in his prime. Jordan was able to beat them once they got older. I thought this was common knowledge with everybody. And I got another thing for you Jordan heads too. Every time I hop into a barbershop, some old head always preach about how Jordan was able to walk on water. He was the greatest. He cannot be touched. And even Stephen A. Smith on his show, he even said that even if LeBron won multiple rings, he will never even touch Jordan. Because you know why?
Do you know why? I tell you what, I apologize. There's one thing he can do. Erase the 6 NBA Finals losses. It absolutely disgusts me that guys ignore the errors. The errors are so important because it was so physical, and the way that what they were allowed to get away with in doing against you defensively and what have you. Michael Jordan endured that all, and essentially the last 6 seasons he completed in the NBA. During those eras, he was a champion.
And I'm sorry, but that's such an idiotic argument to make. If LeBron kept winning rings for the beginning of the 2020s and managed to get 6, you mean to tell me just because he had those 6 finals losses on his resume that eliminates him from being in the GOAT conversation, period? You can't deny the fact that LeBron going to 9 straight finals at one point was one of the greatest feats in sports. And you can't deny now LeBron winning a ring at 35 on a struggling Lakers franchise that hasn't won anything since the late 2000s. That you can't say that was an impressive feat worthy of being in the GOAT conversation. And you can't hold those 6 losses back. Because like I said earlier, everybody loves to add circumstances to the GOAT conversation. Circumstances with Jordan. He didn't have Pippen. His team wasn't that good. He had LeBron's circumstances. 2007, he led a Cavs team whose second best player was Daniel Gibson to the 2007 finals against the San Antonio Spurs. He was 23. In 2011, I admit, LeBron jacked up. That was his worst finals performance we ever seen. That was totally his fault. Big L on him. 2015, Kyrie hurt, Kevin Love hurt, going up against Golden State, one of the up-and-coming dynasties at that time. So what could LeBron do at that point? You had Dudley Jr. and Iman Shumpert. Where's the support at? 2017, you face off against a Golden State team that just added Kevin Durant. Like, that's, what do you expect the player to do? All I'm saying is, in all reality, people, we need to learn to appreciate the greats instead of trying to shoot them down all the time. Because this is the same thing that happened with Kobe. RP to the beam, but right before he passed away, ESPN released these top 10 polls and made these arguments about Kobe about he was a bad shot taker, he was a horrible decision maker, and wasn't as skillful as originally thought. But once he passed, they quickly switched their tune and finally gave him the respect they deserved. But why couldn't Kobe get it while he was alive? Why was he getting all that scrutiny? Because these analysts now, they didn't know what they were talking about at the time. Like I said before on Out of Bounds a long time ago, Jordan, Kobe, and LeBron, I consider those 3 the 3 untouchables.
Those 3 players like MJ, LeBron, and Kobe, we're just gonna have to call them the untouchables now.
Yeah.
Because those are literally like 3 of the best, most influential players that ever touched the NBA hardwood. And the influence those type of guys have, it will never be replicated. So I just feel like those 3 right there, those should be on the list where you just can't compare them.
Facts.
Everybody else below them, they're just fighting for second place.
Facts.
All 3 of those are number 1. So I just think they're just in a class on their own at this point. There's no more comparison.
No more. LeBron, Jordan, and Kobe. No order, by the way. I consider those 3 the 3 untouchables of basketball because we have never seen athletes like them grace the court ever in our league. LeBron was the biggest physical freak and had all the statistics that you need to consider him a GOAT. Michael Jordan, 6-0 in the finals, one of the greatest to ever walk on the court, had that mid-range jumper. He could fly and walk on air. Like, he was everything to the league back then. And then you had Kobe Bryant, the player who truly embodied the work ethic, who had one of the sharpest skills, and one of the greatest scorers that we have seen walk on the court in the NBA. Because I feel like those 3, those are the true greatest of all times. Not no 1A, not no 1B, not no 1C. Those are truly the greatest. Of the game that will never be duplicated, ever, in my humble opinion.